Welcome everyone to this another amazing demo on SAP UI5 and Fiori training. As you heard correctly, this is an absolute beginner course with zero prerequisite to learn SAP UI5 and Fiori. This training is brought to you by anubhavtrainings.com, the #1 channel on the YouTube for SAP UI5, Fiori, ABAP on HANA, S4HANA, and all the technical diet which you need today to be having a successful career going ahead in this new technological world. In the next couple of minutes, we will discuss about basics of SAP UI5. We will understand how the overall course structure and the learning strategy for SAP UI5. Doesn't matter if you're a beginner, an intermediate, or an expert, this course will be there something. This course will be bringing something for you for sure. So let's get started with our first slide. What will be the goal at the end of this course? So this course will help you to learn SAP UI5 easily and effectively. Now, before we start learning anything, the very first thing which comes in our mind is, what are all the things I need to learn? How do I organize myself? So most importantly, it's quite critical that we should learn how to learn. Many a times we've tried or you tried learning SAP UI5 or different things from the internet, and you have observed that lots of things are available already on the internet, but they are all distributed. There's no single place where you can find all the relevant information in the right order. And this is what our training will do. It will help you to find out and organize yourself in a way that you will learn how to learn. The next important goal will be to learn the tooling which we will be using throughout our development cycle. So what kind of tools and deployment options do we have when it comes to SAP UI5 and Fiori apps? The next one will be to learn how to write every single line of code, going away from those old complacent ways of copy pasting the code from one place to another place and somehow bringing the output by making some random changes out of luck, getting those results. Rather than that way, we will move to more complex, little bit more complex approach of writing every single line of code. And that's the main USP you will find here with Anubhav Trainings, that we will not be copy pasting the code like most of the other trainers does. They will just simply download some ready-made examples and copy and paste and show you the result and then just run away. That's not the way to learn new things, because new things takes time. They need a lot of patience, and they also need that you go and practice every single line of syntax so that you understand the depth and the meaning of that line. Then we will also explore the core concepts of SAP UI5. We will go to the depth of the framework to understand how does the overall framework works, including the documentation, and where can you find all the time latest updates. We will be building beautiful Fiori applications with the best practices and gold standard. Many a times you develop something and you go home and that night you cannot sleep because you know in your heart somewhere that you have not done a justice to your work. Or you have this fear that somebody tomorrow review your code. They will be finding out many mistakes. So you are not so comfortable with the development which you have done. Why is because you are not aware of gold standards, the best practices, the ideal way of coding. We will be learning all of them as part of this course, which will make you a tension-free sleep over that night, so that you can be rest assured that the code which you've written, the methodology or the architecture which you followed is a perfect piece of art. At the end, I would say this interactive session will help you to, or give you an opportunity to ask multiple questions and answers during the session itself to clarify your doubts then and there. So that's the benefit of live mode of training. However, we also have the video mode of training where you can get started right away with all the videos in one go, and you can learn by these videos, and then later on come back with your doubts over the email, or you can post on our forum. Now, even for the live batch, after the class is complete, you will get the video of that particular class to review the class. Just in case if you also miss out a session, in the live session, you can later point of time go and check the video as well for the same. So that's basically our course goal. So the what is the most important question? Anubhav, who can learn SAP UI5? So I would say anybody can learn. If you are a college pass out, you can also learn. What do you think what we need to learn something? Whether it is painting or whether it is photography or it is like, doing bungee jumping, jumping from a plane, or achieving skating or teaching skills or technical skills, anybody can learn anything. The only thing which you need is a willpower. And that's why I say, yes, I can and I will. If that willpower is there, you can actually learn anything on this planet which is available. Yes, you can do that, right? So there are so many examples where I've seen a lot of students coming from mechanical background has very low knowledge on coding, yet they have that willpower to practice hard and challenge themselves every single day, and they are able to come out to be or turn out to be an amazing UI5 developer and now placed in a very good multinationals, or they were able to achieve their career goals in terms of if they want to switch their teams or they want to switch their project or get another project as a contractor or do the consulting, all these kinds of things they were able to showcase. It's my personal experience. It doesn't matter where you come from and what you do. What matters is how much willpower do you have to learn things. If you have that willpower and that zeal and enthusiasm to do so, trust me, all is yours. All is yours. This training is for you. However, talking very specific about the job roles, any technical consultant working on SAP space, you may be a BW developer, you may be a HANA developer, you may be a SAP GUI based, ABAP based developer or ABAP based programmer. ABAP programmer, to be very frank, you have a senior developer, principal developer, you are an architect, you are basically a technical consultant who worked on WebDin Pro or classical UI technologies like BSP, dialog programming, WebDin Pro, ABAP, WebDin Pro Java, Portal, all of you who are technical, this is one of the best thing for you which can happen. Yeah. So this is one thing you can definitely do that. The second is functional consultants also can learn this, because these days you see in functional space, you're not getting too much of great opportunities. So that's where it will also help you. Even functional people can learn without any prerequisite, as I already mentioned. Then comes his UX designer. UX designers are the people who are by far doing the design of the application to create kind of a mock-up on the paper or using some kind of tooling to design how the application flow will look like. So this is an opportunity for them as well to go back and turn your ideas into reality with the help of SAP UI5. And of course, these days, I also see a large amount of management colleagues participating in these courses. The reason being, Anubhav, technology is completely changed. And it's extremely difficult as a manager or as a scrum lead for myself to estimate the efforts right. Because when a developer giving me an estimate, I have no clue what the developer is talking about. For example, if a developer says, it's going to take me about 2 days to complete this particular fragment of the UI, I have no clue what is fragment and how much is the real estimate for that completion. So can you give me a quick guide with which I can understand the overall architecture, overall flow, and I can also come back with a plan that, hey, how can you say this much is the time you will be taking, because this is just a fragment which you want to develop. So I can understand and estimate it better. I can also understand the technical discussions and in my team which are happening. Usually, I as a manager don't get too much of respect from the colleagues. Whenever I ask them something, they say, "You just keep quiet. Just we'll give you the estimate. You don't know technical stuff. It's difficult. It's complicated." This is the excuse they give me all the time, Anubhav, and it's very, very challenging for me to perform my work and control them in a better way. So that's where Scrum leads and managers who are non-technical people are also coming and attending this training to be able to understand things better at the depth, because technological change which has happened over the last couple of years is affecting everybody across the globe, across the teams, across the organizations. This is really a change which is not welcomed most of the time, yet we have to deal with this change for our careers. So that's about the target audience. Moving on to the 4-step easy learning process. As I mentioned, what are all the phases in which we will be completing our learning for UI5? So the first phase starts, which is with the foundation of UI5. And I'm sure majority of you coming from SAP background, non-SAP background have probably no idea about what is JS, JavaScript. And as a web developer, to be very honest, sometimes a little skeptical with this word called Java. And you say, oh my God, now do I need to learn Java? Is this what is mandatory? I heard some of my team members talking JavaScript is mandatory. Is it like I need to focus on core Java now and understand the Java concepts? Guys, let me tell you one myth around. You don't need Java programming knowledge to learn UI5. Then the question comes, what is JavaScript? JavaScript is browser's programming language. It has nothing in common with Java except the name. Only the name is common. Otherwise, JavaScript and Java are two completely different programming languages in their design, in their perspective, in their usage. They are completely different. We are going to use JavaScript, and guess what? We will be learning JavaScript along with HTML5, CSS, JavaScript, and jQuery as part of this course. Now, the whole journey will start with the development tool setup. So we use SAP Web IDE Trial Edition, which is SAP Web IDE Personal Edition, which can be installed in your local machine absolutely free for lifetime. Yes, exactly. You heard it correct. The development tool which we will be using is SAP Web IDE, which is free in a trial mode for lifetime. You can download this, set up in your computer, your personal laptop, and you can use it. Even you can set up in your personal laptop, your company laptop. It's a whitelisted software, and you can use that for development. Don't panic. I will cover a step-by-step process of setting up Web IDE in your machine by yourself. There are two flavors for Web IDE. We have a dedicated session number 2, which is planned tomorrow. We will learn how to set up Web IDE in our local machine. Then phase 2 will start with SAP UI5 framework. We will be understanding the core concepts of UI5, including control libraries, control hierarchies, where can you find the documentation about it, and all these things we will be completing as part of UI5 framework step. We use methodology or so-called design pattern, MVC design pattern, model view controller to design our application. This is where the heart of UI5 comes into picture, or heart of a Fiori app comes into picture, because when you develop, you have to follow certain guidelines and rules in the architecture. If you violate them, then maybe you get nice comments on the code review. And when external reviewer comes in your company to review your code, they may also bring up some exciting points for you, which can cause some little bit of disappointment in your mind that maybe the copy paste of code which I've done from internet, it was not the most right way. Yeah. Now coming to the next phase, the Fiori development. So Fiori is all about user experience. So we can give you the tools, but what do you do with those tools? You can construct variety of architectural pieces with that tools. But Fiori will give you give you an organization to your development, giving you the guidelines, giving you the right practices to follow in order to build a beautiful app which is responsive, which can run on all the devices, all the platforms, and all the browsers. So that's what Fiori will help you to do. So we will learn the Fiori user experience guidelines and also build accordingly our Fiori apps using SAP.M library, which is so-called mobile library. And we will be learning the most interesting concepts, the latest concepts like component.js, router, route match handler, manifest JSON. So don't be overwhelmed right now with these names. We will be, as and when continue, learning all of these stuff in the system. Finally, we will learn OData services, how to build OData services, what is an OData service, first of all, how to consume it, how to traverse through the OData, how to look at the metadata, how to look at service documents, and working with OData entities and entity set. This is all we will be learning as part of our process. We will learn integration and deployment, how to integrate your app and deploy this in SAP system or SAP Cloud Platform. And finally, the Launchpad, how to make your app available to the end user in the Fiori Launchpad using Launchpad Designer, and of course, finally allowing user to access the app via the tile. So this is all in all the complete cycle of development divided into 4 equal phases. Each phase is about 25% of the course, and that's how you'll be completing this entire circle to make yourself so comfortable with UI5. And then on top of it, I will also be guiding you. You will get exclusive access to the code base of Anubhav Learning Series. Plus, you will also be, I will be guiding you through the course, which of my YouTube video will help you in what case. So that also together with this, and a complete end-to-end career guidance in terms of securing your career for next 10 years. What are all the things coming new, how they are spanning across, the significance of those new things and new technology all across your company. When you walk around on the floor, you see confusion is there. Everybody's kind of confused. Some of your colleagues have recently attended TechEd. They come back and they're just confusing you. They're telling you, hey, this is what is coming, that is what is coming, this is what is changing, that is what is changing. Nobody gives you a clear direction, a clear flow, and clear peace of mind in terms of what exactly this change means to me. As a developer, as a consultant, what does it mean for me? And how can I adapt, or what are all my learning needs today to adapt to this change so that I can still stay relevant in my company? These questions will be answered actually throughout this course. So I hope I was making it simple. So enough of theory. It's time to go back and start creating our first UI5 application here in the system. So let's look at what is that it needs to create your first app as part of this demo. So what is that you need as a step, first step, first baby step we are taking towards the UI5. What is UI5 and how can we create our first application with our tool, so-called Web IDE. So let's start. So guys, what is UI5? So UI5 is a framework to develop responsive web applications. Amazing. Look at this line that itself describes a lot about SAP UI5. So the first word which I would say is framework over here. The second one comes is responsive. These are the two interesting words. If we understand, we will understand this whole sentence. So let's understand what is framework. The framework is nothing but is collection of libraries. It's a collection of libraries. So what is a library then? A library, just like a library, a collection of books. Similarly here in context of programming, a library is collection of classes. And what is the class? As you all know, class is nothing but collection of properties. You can call them attributes, methods, you can call them behaviors, and events. Yeah. So these are all the overall structure is. So it's a framework. Now, why we use word framework? Because framework is something which gives you something already built in, something already created by somebody. You can reuse and build on top of it. So you don't have to end up writing all the code by yourself. Okay, that's the benefit of a framework. For example, .NET framework. It gives you a tool. It gives you the necessary engines in order to write your code on top of that. And then when you run this, it is going to do the magic for you. So that's your framework concept. So SAP UI5 is one of the framework. Okay. Now, what is the purpose of this framework? Is to build responsive web applications. So let's look at this word called responsive. Most of the people gets confused with the word responsive. Means it's fast. That's how, you know, the English meaning comes out to be responsive. It's very responsive, very fast. No, that's not the meaning of responsive in this context. A responsive means an application which adapts itself based on the device we run. That's exactly called responsive web application. Based on the device which you run, it will adapt itself automatically. That's called responsive web application, everyone. All right. I hope this is clear. These two very simple words with the definition. And now, whenever we want to develop anything, we have some development to it. So if you want to develop your first UI5 app, what is the prerequisite? The first prerequisite is you need a development tool actually. Need a development tool. So we will be using SAP Web IDE as our development tool. So this tool is available in two flavors. One is Web IDE Personal Edition for local machine. So you can set up this tool in the local machine. And you can also use SAP Web IDE Full Stack in SAP Cloud Platform. Now, what is Web IDE? How does it look? How to set up Web IDE? This is covered in our next chapter. So that's planned tomorrow. We will cover this particular step in next chapter. And you all will be able to set up Web IDE development tool in your system in next class. For demo purpose, I will suppress this particular prerequisite here and I will move on to the next part right away. Trust me, in the next class, we will start with setting up the development tool. Like, I assume that you're a fresher. I will assume with that assumption, we'll proceed forward. Okay. Now, whenever you want to build an application, whether it is ABAP or C programming or Java or C++ or even Python, any programming language you ever use or anything you ever done in programming world, it follows more or less the same pattern. So how do we develop, or how are we developing by far on this planet Earth? How are we doing these steps? So the very first thing comes is initialization. Anything you do, first you do an initialization of something. Maybe you're invoking some engine, or you're initializing something, you're adding some reusability to your application. That's first step, initialization. Those who come from computer science background, you see, or even any engineering background, we used to write C program, we used to say hashtag include conio.h, right? Studio.h. This is what we used to do. What is that? It's actually a preprocessor directive which is calling up a kind of library where you have printf function placed so that you can use the printf function. So that's kind of initialization code. Java programming, you do initialization in terms of types, or you want to do initialization with selection screen. Yeah, so that's your initialization. How you will load the dependencies in order to run your program. That's step number one. Second step comes is declaration of variables and objects. So most of the programming language these days follows object-oriented pattern of development. And then there you create probably a variable or an object which you will be using throughout your code. And then you will write the logic for user input. Basically your user interface, where you will accept some logic from the user. Say, hey user, can you please pass me the value of material or plant or a personnel number? So that's your user input logic, which we will build typically using selection screens in Core ABAP. So that's how we do step number 3. And then in the next step, you will have your actual processing logic. It is nothing but it includes your orchestration between screens, your application logic, all of this comes in over here. Finally, you will present the output to the user, display the output to the user, and finally you will write your cleanup code at the end. So this is the flow of majority of the types of development, any programming language this is the simplified way of writing the code. Wherever you start learning anything, any programming language, this is what you learn for the first time. Now, going with the same flow, we will also write our first application over here. Now, a couple of interesting things with respect to SAP UI5. So first thing comes is syntax. Whenever you're working with SAP UI5, you need to remember this syntax. So we'll be following again the object-based approach. So I will be creating an object. So what is the syntax to create an object in SAP UI5? So we say var, and we will say the object name. So I'm putting the non-keywords in capital letter, equals to new. New is a keyword again. It says I want to create a new object. And then as I mentioned, we have a library. So we will have to put a library name from the UI5 framework. And then we have to put the class name inside that library in the UI5 framework. Now parenthesis, and then we have to write here the ID of the control ID, whatever you want to put, comma, curly braces, and then inside this you will write your property name, property value, property name, property value. So for example, you're creating a button. Now for a button, a property could be a label property for the button, a text property for the button. When I create a button on the UI, what will be the label which it will show to the end user? That's your property. And then we'll give the value for that property. We will see an example in a moment in the real system. So this is the syntax we follow. Again, I'll repeat: var object name, the name of the object you want to create, new keyword, the library name. As I just mentioned about a minute ago, UI5 is a framework, which is a collection of libraries. And these libraries contains classes, and each class contains properties. So that's what is happening here. We have here the object name. We have the new keyword, the library name dot class name, and then you give the ID of the control, and then you give property and value. Now this becomes your declaration for the object of any UI element you want to create in UI5. And then you will of course place this as part of your page, so that on the page this button will get displayed. All right, so let's also start our development now. We will start with initialization, declaration, logic, processing, presentation, logic, and cleanup code. All of this we will be following. So first comes is initialization. How do you initialize your first project in UI5 and start writing your first piece of code? Of course, you see when I start writing, we will be writing an HTML page. What is an HTML page? An HTML page consists of a header, or I say a brain, and body. Okay, any HTML page you start or create on the, which is basically for the browser understand HTML pretty well. So that's why we create an HTML page. So in HTML page, it consists of header and body. What is body? Body is what users see. That's your body. Header is what? It's brain. Any kind of processing logic which you write, it should be in the brain. So brain is your processing, and body is what people see, right? It's like our human mankind. We have a brain which nobody can see. Okay, brain is inside your skull, and that's the processing engine for your entire body, which commands your body. Okay, and the body is what people see, your presentation, right? Similarly, an HTML page contains a head and a body. Head contains the processing logic, and body is what users see. So when you run an HTML page, user will see what is written in the body. So let's get started with first an initialization code. So I'm going to come back, and you can see here, this is our development tool. We call it as Web IDE. I have already set up this tool in my system over here, and I will be using this tool over here. I'll just log in, and you will see this tool is launching in my local computer. It works beautifully on local machine. I will show you how to set up this tool in your computer in our next session. Okay, so just had a fresh instance of Web IDE here, and you can see this is how it looks like. You can assume more or less it looks like any development tool. So like if you have worked with ABAP, so you know SCAT, your ABAP workbench. So you have on the left hand side your view for object repository objects. When you click on one of the object on the right hand side, it will show you the code where you can start writing your application code. So this is exactly in the same fashion. If you work with Eclipse or any other development tool in your life, Power BI, or for example, any tool, this is how typically any development tool looks like. On the left side, they show the artifacts. On the right side, you will go and write your code, which you want to do. So let's start with a fresh folder. I'm going to right click on the workspace in new, create a new folder, and we'll just give some name. Let's say welcome 2020. That's my project name. Of course, your project name should be even much better. Just for demo purpose, I'm just keeping welcome 2020. And now I'm going to say right click and I say new, and we'll just add a file, and we give the file name here as HTML extension. So file name can be anything, but the extension has to be .html. So let's put anubhav.html, my name, and you can see we have created our first HTML file, okay, which is what browser can understand. And I'll start with an HTML document. So we'll start with something called HTML document like this. And in this, we will put header and we'll put body. This is what we just discussed. Any HTML page consists of header and body. We had put a HTML page with the tags and HTML head and the body. Every single line of code, no copy paste of code. Never learn from trainers who are teaching you copy paste. They are cheating you. They are not teaching you. All right. So that's header and the body. Now we have a detailed chapter planned on HTML, where the HTML come from, what is the history of HTML, what is the legacy, how does the HTML was born and what was it used for, and how did people have built frameworks on top of HTML. We'll be doing all of that with dedicated HTML tags. We will be learning in detail in our coming chapter number 3 and 4. Dedicated HTML learning we will be doing. Right now it's a demo, so I'm just showcasing you the basic stuff so that you can get familiarized with my style of teaching. I can just go back and save. And now we have a header and the body. So let's go to the body of HTML. And here is where we're going to write something. So I will just say www.anubhavtrainings.com, our website. Save this up. And I can just go ahead and execute. So let me click on run. And now I'll see my application would run. And wow, you can see I've got a beautiful text printed over here on our web page. So that's your first web page app on the web ID. It was simple. Yeah. So now coming to the next step, we are now going to use SAP UI5 to build our first page, first application. So the very first thing which comes over here is initialization again. We got to initialize this framework. We need to invoke this framework. We need to bring, we want to use the power of UI5. So we need to invite the framework first of all. So how this invite will happen? You have to send an invite to SAP. Hey, SAP UI5 framework, please come and be part of my application so that I can use you. I can leverage the power from you. So I can use your libraries. I can use your classes. This is step number 1, initialization. So I'm going to go back, and that code is something not going to go in the body. As I mentioned, it's a brain. So we will write here another very powerful statement called the script tag. And we're going to give src source is the source of the script. So source will tell you where is the UI5 is placed and from where it should be loaded. So now what we do is in this step, we tell the system that UI5 is placed somewhere on the internet and please download it from the internet. So this syntax actually is responsible for downloading programmatically the UI5 at runtime in the browser, and we'll be placing it in the browser. So that's what system will do for you with this syntax. So now what is the address of this gentleman? Where is it placed? So address is, I'll tell you, https tools SAP UI5 .tools.hana.ondemand.com /resource /SAP UI core.ps. Okay, this is the address. Now the question comes, Anubhav, how do you know this address, Anubhav? So I know this address with the documentation, our chapter number 11, where I will talk about SAP UI5 SDK, the software development kit, which is freely available to you for start your development. So that's where I got to know this address. And by far it's been, you know, a great journey learning with UI5. So I've been remembering this now by heart, right? So now I've just also test this. Is it really a real address on the internet somewhere? I'm just going to copy and put it in my browser and press enter just to cross check if this is the address which is working fine. As you can see, when I load, it doesn't work. So I think it's a resource, or there's something I'm missing. Okay, let me just cross check. And maybe I just have to search again. SAP UI5 resources. It's not loading. You can see there's a problem. So maybe I just search for SAP UI5 Bootstrap. So this is how you can also search. You will get the address right away. You see bootstrapping UI5. So SAP UI5 dot. Let me just go back, check. It's not tools. It's just SAP UI5 hana.ondemand.com. That's the correct address. I'm going to copy this again. And let me just go back and place enter. And voila. You see, it is now giving me some response, yeah, which indicates that something is cooking, something is there. Okay, now don't panic by looking at this code. Of course, you never ever need to look at this code, neither need to understand. This is a framework developed by SAP. We're just testing if this URL is correct or not. That's how we just check things. Okay, so now it's done, it's working fine. So I can be rest assured that when I run my app, the UI5 will be loaded. Now, this UI5 framework contains collection of libraries. We don't want every library to be loaded, because then it will be too much of performance overhead loading everything. So we want to tell UI5, hey UI5, I don't want everything. You just give me one library which I need right now in my app. And that library is what we're going to specify as a next statement, data SAP UI libs. And we're going to tell I want only SAP.library, which is mobile library. Now, what are all these libraries? How many of them are there? Where can I find the details about each of the library? I will cover in chapter number 11 after our foundation is complete. Okay, so that's the next line, significance. So why I'm writing the code here is to make you understand the significance of every single line. What usually trainers do, they just copy this code from somewhere and paste it and say, okay, this is done. Yeah, done, goodbye. And when you go to production, you stuck with some issue there. You have no clue what this line is meant for. And you just keep changing the code by luck. If it works, it works. Otherwise, oh my God, we have a problem. Your manager say, are you really an expert, or how are you coding it then? Right? So this is the main problem in industry. People don't give time to things to understand from scratch. And then they get demotivated that it's tough, it's difficult. It's not at all difficult. I can learn, you can definitely learn. What you just need is the willpower, which I showed you at the beginning. I can and I will. If you have that willpower, trust me, it's so easy. We together will be doing miracle at the end of this course. We'll be building amazing Fiori applications. So that's the next step. And next to that, I want to also get beautiful Fiori experience. So for that, there's another parameter which we put to load a theme. Okay, and that's called data SAP UI. And we're going to say SAP underscore Blue Crystal. However, we have even more advanced version of themes like SAP Fiori 3 themes, and we have SAP Bleeze theme, which is a little more advanced than Blue Crystal, but majority of the audience is still see this as the default theme till today. So that's the next parameter we have loaded. The theme parameter, which is going to get you that Fiori experience actually. Now, when you load this theme parameter, you also have to say, hey, when this theme is loaded, my whole body should be colored in Fiori theme. Yeah, whole body. So we have to add a classification property. Okay, and we say SAP UI body. This is going to represent my entire body of the page. So I just give this extra classification property. Now, what is the significance of this classical classification property? Where it has come from? How many other class properties are there? So we will be looking at it in chapter number 4 when we start with CSS. Okay, so that's a next step. So now I've done my initialization completed, and it has also loaded the theme and the library. So let's go ahead and now execute once again our app. I'm going to go back and take this URL. We open it in another browser window, makes it easy for me to switch the context. I'm going to open another browser window and just enter this one over here. And now you see, wow, beautiful. You observe carefully, last time the background was white, and now this turned it to light blue. If you ever seen any Fiori app in your life, you can imagine this is the same background you get it in Fiori. Light blue background. Exactly. That is coming, and it's clearly in evidence here that SAP UI5 framework is now live in action. It is loaded with its theme and library. So what can we do? We can then definitely go ahead and use one of the class with our syntax, which we just learned about a minute ago, to create our first button on the UI, or button on this page. Okay, so this is the syntax. We will follow this var variable, object name equals to new, library name dot class name, the ID of the control, and then property in value, Now, a couple of interesting things here. Fundafox. What is Fundafox? It was a word which I've invented during my college days. So whenever I teach, I cover or I highlight those parts of the code or those parts of the topic which makes it interesting for certification point of view, which makes it interesting from the interview point of view, and that's the crux of that topic. So this is what over here FundaFox is all about. So FundaFox is actually important of that topic. Within that topic, what is so important, you need to always remember, because there will be certification questions and there will be interview questions during that. So first FundaFox coming up on your screen, many times we kind of conveniently ignore the basics. So understand the symbols will make you or break you. The symbols are having different significance in programming, and the way you pronounce them is also different. And when you're talking on a link call or Skype call with your colleagues, make sure that you use them correctly. Okay, otherwise people will think that you don't have the sufficient knowledge or you don't have the depth knowledge. So the first one, which people usually pronounce as a bracket, it's not bracket, it's called parenthesis. Trust me guys, when you change the way you look at and you understand the basics and the core, it becomes extremely simple and you will be able to do much more as compared to what you're able to do. The second one is called curly braces. Never do a mistake while you're talking your colleagues or architect about these symbols. Otherwise they will say, oh, you don't know this basic. And this one is called bracket. Now there's another name for this called braces also. So this is a very basic thing. I know what are you teaching? It's very simple. Yeah, for you it's very simple, but sometimes some of the people use them interchangeably and this destroys the whole syntax. So be very careful with these FundaFoxes. They will be responsible for your syntax errors. All right. So you see here we've used parentheses and curly braces. So these are the two symbols we've used it. So let's go ahead into the system, and now let's create our first button from SAP M library. So I'm going to go back to header itself, and I'm going to add another piece of script tag for the code. And now in this, I will say var, my keyword, o, Spidey. This is my name. Whatever you want to like, you can just put that. Object name, new sap.m. You just remember this library we loaded, SAP-M library. And then in this, we have a button class. Parenthesis, ID btn, whatever you want. You can just put that comma, curly braces, and now I will give the text property for my button, and we can name something this button. I will name it as this Spider-Man. So that's my button name, guys. Now question comes, Anubhav, how do you know there's a text property? This is what we specifically cover in chapter number 12 in our course, where we'll talk about UI5 control hierarchies. So that's the chapter number 12 in our course, where we'll detail cover how do you know that which property, which events, which aggregation, which methods are available for a class, and what are all the significance of these properties, aggregation, what is an aggregation? Yeah, we will talk about the basics line by line, step by step, no copy paste of code. So you can get hold of entire subject, a great command on the entire subject. So that's your variable Spidey, which is just a variable. As you already know, the very simple rule, what user see is what is in the body. User won't see this button. You just declared a variable, object variable. User will not see this button. If I come back and refresh, you will see user cannot see this button out here, because there's this need to put this button on the front end, on the UI, and that's what we do in the body. So body is what user see. User cannot see this. Gentleman is just a variable. Okay, so now in the body, what I'll do is probably go here and put a element called div element. It's called division tag. We'll cover this in chapter number 3. It's lined up in chapter number 3. What is a div tag? Just give an ID to this, and I can give any ID. Let's say ID20. That's an ID I give. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the system, hey, this variable which you created, can you please place this variable into this element 2020? So I just have to give ID 2020, and that's it, guys. We are done. Now what you see when you run, it's going to place the button into that particular element. The element belongs to the body, and since you're putting now this one in the body, this will be visible to the end user. Let's come back and refresh, and now you will see you would be getting a beautiful button. Wow, it's a first button Spider-Man. Of course, when I click, nothing happens because I didn't write any logic yet. Remember the steps to build a program. First was initialization, then was declaration of variable, and then we had the design of our screen, the user input. We had put a button out there, we placed it in the body, and now comes the processing logic. So processing logic, it's so simple. Just have to use events for processing logic. So we have to come back, comma, and we have to say press. When user press, what should happen? And that's what going to be a function. So don't panic with the syntax. We'll learn all the syntax during our course of fundamental chapters. So with HTML5, CSS, JavaScript, you will be very comfortable with the syntax in detail. So right now I'm just showing you how exactly the flow will be. So coming to function, and I can just say alert, and I'll say welcome to world of UX. Save this up, go back, refresh, and now watch out. We've got a real processing logic and output logic. So this is your processing logic. What should happen? How should happen? And this is what should happen. So what should happen when you click on button? This is the output. We are giving output also. Click. Voila. Here you go. Welcome to the world of UX. Thank you so much, everybody, for this demo session. I'm done with today's class. That's how you create your first UI5 app. I hope you understand and like my demo session. For more, you can check our YouTube channel. Name of the channel is Anubhav Oberoi. We have extremely high number of videos on YouTube, but none of those videos will help you if you not take this training, because training is where you understand the fundamentals and everything what you need to know to build something. My videos on YouTube is actually more advanced techniques like camera integration, a lot of advanced stuff. So you can always go to the channel Anubhav Oberoi. That's where you will find all the videos. We will also guide you and give you exclusive access to Anubhav Learning Series with the complete source code you will be able to download. So you can see on our channel, we have high number of videos. You can see also the last demo session is published. The same demo which we are currently doing here with you will also be published after 3 hours on this channel. So you can go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell icon so you get notified of today's demo class. I hope this is clear to everybody. With that, I'm done with my demo session. Thank you so much for all of you. What is that the next step from your end? If you want to subscribe this training, feel free to send an email on install.abap@gmail.com. You can also send us an inquiry on anubhavtrainings.com, or you can also reply to the email which you have received for the demo session. You have received an email. To the same email you can also reply after the session is complete. With that, thank you so much once again. Thanks for being always there and supportive for this channel. I will see you in the next class tomorrow. Have a nice day and